everyone. Today we are joined by Anthony Kennada, founder and CEO of AudiencePlus. He's joining us today on our founder series from A to Z, where we talked about founder experiences and what he's learned in his journey. So welcome, Anthony. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about who you are, who AudiencePlus is, and what you all do.
Yeah, so I am sort of a career marketer, I guess, in B2B SaaS. Kind of grew up on more of the sales and product side of the house, and then came in as the head of marketing at Gainsight from our kind of earliest days, pre-market, and really have spent the last 12, 13 years trying to just understand the art of building brand for within the context of B2B SaaS. How can brand actually be a driver of growth, not just a sort of corporate marketing kind of thing that sits on the side? And had a chance to lead marketing after Gainsight at a company called Front, and then most recently Hopin. And at each of these companies, one of the things that I was tasked with was to basically turn our brand into a media company, or using kind of more of the B2B language, establish thought leadership with, within the market, build an inbound engine, some of these kind of different tactics and language that we've used historically. And the way we've done that traditionally is to basically build a web property on our domain that became the home for all of our thought leadership, all of our content, whether it was written blog posts, videos, podcasts, live events, those types of things. And through it, build an audience, build a subscribership behind our thought leadership. Again, in the old school language, it was create a lot of opt-ins to our marketable database for people who cared about this idea that we were out here championing. And what I found was I've really had to hack that interface together and try to connect it with all of our systems in the back end, using either WordPress templates that were all glued together with a bunch of Zapier connections. It was never pretty. Or I went down the path of an agency and spent a ton of money getting something that looked beautiful. Ultimately, it wasn't connected to our systems in a great way. And then when they handed it over, I had no engineering resources to actually manage it and maintain it kind of moving forward. So at Hopin, I was about to do this for a third time. And I was like, gosh, there's got to be something off the shelf now that helps us basically up-level our content distribution, build an audience, and understand the engagement of that audience on revenue or on pipeline, whatever it is that we're kind of accountable for. And there wasn't. And so that was sort of the moment of conviction for me to walk away from the CMO kind of career and start a company to kind of bring this to market. And we launched AudiencePlus. So it's been sort of, early days for us still, but we've built what we're calling kind of an owned media platform that replaces your blog or your resource center, or could be a standalone site, kind of looks and feels a little bit like Netflix for your brand. You can distribute all of your content from your owned property. You can build an audience of subscribers. You can use machine learning to understand engagement and draw that connection to revenue. And ultimately, we think this is a sustainable way to impact revenue and grow companies kind of moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a marketer myself, I understand all too well the challenges of the fragmented audience, and then you're uploading things on YouTube, and then your own blog, and then you have Medium, and then there's no really owned audience or owned channel that you can use. And then, like you said, in order to capture that audience data, you have to connect it through another API, or kind of manually download those analytics and things like that, which was super not very useful for a marketer who's looking to use that data to make decisions and to grow those audiences.
Exactly.
What did you mentioned your kind of aha moment was you're about to do this for the third time, and then you're like, oh, there must be a better way. So what eventually made you make that leap and to say oh, I can build, from there must be a better way to I have the better way and I'm going to build this? And what did that initial product look like?
Yeah. I mean, it was terrifying, to be honest, making that leap. I mean, I think the idea sort of just came to me as I was just reflecting on kind of my journey as a marketer and that sort of situational frustration at the company of not finding a solution. And honestly, a little bit of doubt. I must not be looking hard enough on Google to find the right thing. but sure enough, after enough time there, wasn't able to find a solution in market. But I didn't just jump in at that point. Again, a little more risk averse than that. So my first call was Forum Ventures, not to make this a total commercial, but like, honestly, I reached out to Mike Cardamone, who I've known for, since 2009, whatever that is, 14, 15 years now. And just got some of the validation on the idea. I just literally like screenshotted an iPhone note and sent it to him. I'm like, is there something here? And he was really intrigued by it, sent it to a few other kind of confidants and got some good feedback. So then I actually turned that iPhone note into like a working Google Doc, kind of like a manifesto, but I basically just took each like category of an investor deck and like market, problem, solution, whatever. And I started writing and researching, and it turned into this like very long doc. And I sent it to other CMOs that I've met along the way in my network and just relationships I've developed, and asked them to like rip it apart, leave comments in the doc, tell me what you think, and was able to kind of start to sharpen the idea from there. But even then it was like, look, this is a big impact to my family. Like would have to take a massive pay cut. We have 2 small kids at home. The time commitment to start a company is well documented, and just the stress that brings into the household. So it probably wasn't until just good conversation, with my wife and family that was like, hey, I think this is like worth doing. So taking that leap was not without its diligence, probably about a month and a half to 2 months of like, really thinking about it, nights and weekends, that sort of thing. And then once I took the leap, I think the question was like, what's the worst that can happen? I don't know if that's a fair thing to say. Like, there's probably a lot of bad that can still happen, but it felt like it was one of those things, that was one of those ideas that you just can't stop thinking about. And it just felt like one of those, I just kind of had to do it type of moments.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And then how did you go about acquiring your first customers or getting people to trust your product and start using your product, not just as like a quick demo, but then also becoming paying users or active users?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple different, I'd say 2 different tactics. And I think there are some learnings here for other founders that are thinking about this, because a lot of this came from first principles. Again, I didn't have like a great roadmap for how to do this. I kind of felt pretty good about like the 1 to 100 journey, but 0 to 1 terrified me, and still does. Hopefully I'm on the other side of it here soon. Because again, there's, there's blog posts and there's some content, but like very contextual things that we had to kind of figure out ourselves. The first big aha moment was this idea of micro advisors. And so, I had done some advisories over the years where you get equity and they may never call you, or their expectation might be like, we need you 3 hours a week. And like, I can't do that. And so we came up with this idea, actually inspired by Sendoso and the work that Chris, the CEO there, has kind of pioneered. But really this idea of saying, let's just take like a very small piece of the business, like not a lot, and give it to some CMOs, some demand leaders, some content leaders in our industry, sort of in the spirit of reciprocity. Like, we're going to give you equity. We'd like for you to be a part of this. And, there's no expectation on your time, or anything along those lines, but we're going to send you 1 email a month and just ask for your feedback. So we'd record like a Figma kind of prototype demo or something to that end, get their feedback. So we built a advisor kind of pool, advisor community of about 60 advisors now. And these are the leading voices in marketing today in our industry and different disciplines as well. And it created this like halo effect around the company, of which one of the fruits was some early customer conversations as well. So I think the big learning there is like the idea of, customer driven design, engineering, and how we sort of like build the product with customers versus just with our own kind of bias, was extremely helpful in the product, but also fairly helpful from a commercial kind of go to market as we were starting to monetize. So that was the first big learning. The second one was, and obviously this is very biased to our business, but we kind of launched the brand before we launched the product. And so we've been in market right now at the time of recording for probably 7 months or so. without anyone knowing what exactly we do, but producing content around owned media, producing content around how should you think about, distributing your content on social channels, and using our own product sort of behind the scenes to do that. And as a result, we've built an audience of about 2,500 or so subscribers without paying $1 of paid media towards any paid media or digital advertising. And we've been like seeding this concept out there. And so what we found in doing so is we're getting a lot of like inbound questions of like, I don't know what you do exactly, but we love your content. We have an own media initiative. Can we just like talk and figure out kind of what that could, like, if you can help us. And that was extremely helpful. So I think the lesson there is sort of this idea of like building in public, where consumer marketers, D2C companies have really, I think pioneered that. Haven't seen a lot of that in B2B, but I found that it's been an accelerant to, again, not even advertising a product, but pulling people around the company and leading to some of these commercial conversations through the thought leadership that you're producing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And AudiencePlus, so you just raised your seed round, which is really exciting, and you're launching your beta coming up, I believe. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what that looks like?
Yeah, so we raised the seed round with some amazing partners. It was led by Emergence Capital, as well as Forum, of course, and a few other seed rounds, seed funds, and the CEOs from Zoom, Gainsight, Redis, and Guild Education. And it was awesome. I mean, it's getting just again, as a first-time founder, especially getting the validation of, some really smart people to come around the idea, to come alongside us as we're building the company has been super, super valuable. And I referenced, Mike and Jonah, me asking some very dumb questions because I'm again, first timer. Like literally, like, how do you hire people? Like literally, like, how do you hire them? Because I've hired people, but then they show up to work the next day or whatever. But, getting some real kind of practical help from folks has been, and relationship kind of leverage and all that has been unbelievable and so helpful for us. And yes, we are probably at the time this airs, we would have just launched our beta product. And so now available through a wait list at audienceplus.com. And so, part of this for us is it is a private beta that we're now just talking about the product more. It is available. Customers are using Audience Plus. But we also know we're a small company. We don't want to just open up the floodgates to 10,000 people. We want to like really partner with the next, call it 100 or so customers, and help make them successful. So again, building in public a little bit, but we want to, I don't know, coming from Gainsight, so I'm pretty biased, but like we believe deeply in making our customers successful and investing in that. And so, we've got the likes of Zuora and Nextiva, Five9, Gainsight, Crossbeam, who are some of our early kind of customers. And we're excited to partner with others who, are thinking about building an own media kind of presence and initiative, thinking about just how can we leverage editorial content formats like podcasts, videos like this one and others to actually impact revenue and kind of take back the control a little bit that's been lost over the last couple of years.
That's great. And how is your experience as a founder, or your role as a founder, how has that shifted from kind of day one to now? And then how do you maybe foresee it shifting even more as you're, like you said, like hiring more people and your team more?
It really, I used the word terrifying earlier. I definitely think, again, there's no real playbook, at least that I know of, that is is easy to figure out if you've never done this before. And so the stress that I felt early was like accounting and bookkeeping and, employee stock option pool and how to allocate that. And, we're hiring people, but we're too small to be a PEO. So like, do we incorporate in a bunch of these different states? And so a lot of the back office stuff like really stressed me out. But the encouragement there too was like with each conversation would lead to another open door to a contractor or an agency or someone that could help kind of take some of that stuff off my plate. And so, Forum and others have been super helpful to like make those introductions. But certainly I would say like the first quarter is like, okay, how do we do the back office stuff to like actually build a company? But then how do we start a product development process from scratch? How do we take an idea that I have in my head somewhere and actually turn it into a product and a platform and a business and all of that? So that was, I think, the phase one of like terrified, I say it half jokingly, but also just like a lot of intellectual curiosity, a lot of growth personally to figure out all of that stuff. How it's evolving, I think probably in a couple ways. One, I'm going to get a little bit closer to my comfort zone, I think, in terms of managing a leadership team, which we do, of course, but scaling that, building a culture and establishing kind of a company culture. We've had values from literally the first day of the company, but just helping to sort of like put those in action, across the organization as we scale and grow. So all of that stuff, I'm not the best in the world at it, but like I'm very excited about it, and I feel like more equipped for doing a lot of that work. But the other thing is, and if there are any other founders listening who are former operators, how can you sort of scale but not like just slip into doing the thing that you did before you were a founder? So for me, there's a lot of temptation to like do the CMO kind of job, and we have a head of marketing, and I need to make sure to empower that person and let them make decisions and not just like, take the ball kind of a thing in different kind of scenarios. So I think that's the piece that I want to be careful of is, it's a new job, it's a new day, it's a new set of responsibilities. And I have to make sure to be mindful of some of the muscle memory around the different functions of the company.
Great. And has there been what has been the most rewarding part of this whole journey?
Oh man.
Think of just one, maybe.
Oh man, I got three. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, do say this.
It's the people ultimately, right? And so I was thinking it's the team and seeing just the impact that the team's making and just the excitement around bringing something like this to market. It's the people on the audience and the people that are seeing the content that are like feeling like they belong to this movement that we're creating, and they're kind of saying it back to us, and feeling like, we can be the brand that's helping fight for their kind of conviction as well around this idea. And then in more recent times, it's customers, it's people that are like betting with their budgets and saying, not only do we believe, but we are actually, running an initiative around owned media, and we want to work with AudiencePlus. So for me, in all of those cases, it's the people that has been the most fulfilling. And I don't suspect that that's going to change, anytime soon.
That's great. And do you have maybe a couple tips or any lessons that you'd like to share with other founders? Like, you were a first-time founder yourself, so maybe you were kind of building the plane as you're flying it in some ways, but do you have any tips for that you'd wish that somebody would have told you as a first-time founder?
Many. I think, I think in general, it's cutting yourself a little bit of slack. I think a lot of this is very high pressure, and because when you're a operator, the potential is you're working for someone else, and so you get a small kind of piece of the business, and you're working just as hard, arguably, to bring about impact at the company. But when you're starting something, you obviously have a bigger piece of the pie, but yet the same amount of hours to give the company, the family, like your responsibilities outside of work. And so it feels like everything's a trade-off across work and personal, and how you sort of draw those boundaries and create enough margin to like rest and recover and invest in the relationships around you. I think if you're like me, at least, you can kind of hold yourself to like an impossible standard and then fail, quite a bit. And it's easy to get like hard on yourself for that. And so I think giving yourself a little bit of slack, knowing you're trying to do a very hard thing, and the people around you, are hopefully part of that, journey, like with you, and not something that's being done in isolation.
Yeah. It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
It was great hearing more about Audience Plus and what you guys are doing. Do you have any final thoughts, final words?
No, I mean, I'm happy to help any other founders kind of in the portfolio or others who are, who are former operators, whatever, who are thinking about going on this journey. Like, don't hesitate to reach out, and would love to compare notes.